Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan. It's time for big opinions, big stories and big laughs. That's right, tomorrow's papers in Headliners with Nick Dixon and Andrew Doyle. See you after the headlines.
Good evening, I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine because he fears having a democratic nation as his neighbour. Speaking at the Conservative Party Spring Conference, Boris Johnson said the Russian president is threatened by Ukraine's free press and elections.
He feared the Ukrainian example, and he feared the implicit reproach to himself. Because in Putin's Russia, you get jailed for 15 years just for calling an invasion an invasion. And if you stand against Putin in an election, you get poisoned or shot.
112 children have been killed since the start of the Russian invasion, according to the Ukrainian prosecutor's office. In the east, the governor of Luhansk says a humanitarian corridor is being opened for residents trying to evacuate the region. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling for face-to-face talks with his Russian counterpart, telling Vladimir Putin it's time for comprehensive and meaningful negotiations.
I want everyone to hear me now, especially in Moscow. The time has come for a meeting. It is time to talk. The time has come to restore territorial integrity and justice for Ukraine. Otherwise, Russia's losses will be such that it will take several generations to recover.
In other news, detectives have named a man they're trying to trace following the murder of a 19-year-old woman in Clerkenwell in London. Police say early indications suggest 22-year-old Mahama Maroof had been in a relationship with the victim and that they had been together that evening. She was found with serious neck injuries at student accommodation and pronounced dead at the scene. The Met Police say anyone who sees Maroof should not approach him but call 999 immediately. P&O Ferries has resumed services between Liverpool and Dublin after sacking 800 staff on Thursday. Maritime Union Nautilus International is urging the government to revoke the ferry operators' licences in British waters. In a letter to the Transport Secretary, the union is also calling for any taxpayer money received during the pandemic to be returned. Firefighters are still tackling a huge blaze in the village of Parkgate in Cheshire, which they suspect may have been started deliberately. Crews responded to the incident just after 6:20 this evening. Witnesses have posted footage online of the flames, which are spread across a kilometre of marshland and are being driven by winds. Cheshire Fire and Rescue say fire breaks have been put in place to protect nearby properties. Members of the public are being asked to stay away from the area. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Headliners.
It's 3 minutes past 11. I'm Mark Dolan and you're watching Headliners, a comprehensive look at Sunday's papers in the company of two top comedians whose keen intellect and competitive rates made their booking a no-brainer. Yes, tonight I'm delighted to welcome a double act more trusted than Marks and Spencer, more powerful than Black & Decker, and more terrifying than The Craze. It's Andrew Doyle and Nick Dixon. Lots to get through, gentlemen. Are we well on a Saturday night?
Very well.
Very well. Happy to be here with the dream team.
Absolutely.
Very much the dream team. Lots of stories to get through. Light and shade, which is what Headliners is all about, plus lots of opinions. Let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages, and we'll start with the Telegraph. Johnson frustrated with Sunak over nuclear. The PM wants to increase the number of new reactors to address the growing energy crisis, but of course the concerns at the Treasury is that costs billions. The Independent, there must be no way back for Putin, warns PM. Relations with Russia cannot be normalised without a new leader. The Observer, fury greets PM's claim that Ukraine fight is like Brexit, something we'll be discussing later in the show. Ukraine battle is like Brexit, PM tells party. That's according to the front page of the Sunday Times. And officials failed to challenge controversial P&O firings. Sunday Express. Now Putin unleashes Invincible missile. Desperate Vladimir Putin has upped the ante by firing a hypersonic missile capable of carrying nuclear warheads at Ukraine for the first time. The Kinzhal missile, which travels at more than 5 times the speed of sound, destroyed a weapons storage site in the west of Ukraine on Friday. This according to a Moscow source. Despot lashes out as Ukraine war stalls. PM says the world must fight for freedom. Last but not least, Daily Star Sunday. Crazy Putin's new terror missile, covering that Express story. And Room with a Woo! Ghost warnings as you check in to the most haunted hotel in Britain. Guests at Britain's most haunted B&B are warned as they check in that wailing spectres may disturb their sleep. Better than a drunken wedding party, I'd say. And those are your front pages. So many stories to get through. Let's kick off with Boris and Rishi squabbling over nuclear power. This in Sunday's Telegraph. Nick, they're like a bickering couple, aren't they?
They are indeed, Mark, and it's quite an important topic. It's nuclear power. Boris Johnson frustrated with Rishi Sunak over resistance to new nuclear power plants. So Boris wants to make these big bets, as he said in his speech at the conference, over nuclear. And Rishi, he believes, anyway, is stalling, and the Treasury has perhaps been scuppering attempts to get it in place. So I think Boris is right on this, though I also understand it might be frustrating to deal with Boris's sudden enthusiasms if you're the one that has to pay for it all, especially after the disastrous cost of lockdowns. And what was really interesting is that he talked about the energy situation in his speech today. And really what it is a last-minute U-turn because of this war. But he sold it as like a great thing and everyone clapped. It was quite funny because he talked about years of short-termism. I'm thinking, like, yes, from your party, you've been in since 2010. I mean, even if you say the coalition, 2015. So it's like, it was very, he said, we want to stop putting money in Putin's bank account. So I absolutely believe in all that. It's all very last minute, if you ask me. And obviously, Rishi's got to pay for it.
That's the issue, isn't it? It's all politics.
Of course. I mean, these two have been at it since Partygate. I think there's been a rift between them. I think Sunak sees himself as the next PM, I should imagine. But this is a...
And he'd like to have a few quid to spend if he gets the top job.
I would have thought so. And of course, Boris has one eye on his legacy. And I think the establishment of nuclear power in a substantial way would be one way to achieve that. And if you think about it, France implemented their decarbonisation back in or started it over a 12-year period back in the 1970s. And as a result, today, they have 70% of their energy comes from clean sources. 70% of their electricity comes from clean sources. So they are reaping the benefits of that decision many decades ago. And I suppose Johnson is thinking about maybe a long-term legacy here.
It does perpetuate...
I just like Dan who said he has one eye on his legacy. Is it like his whole focus?
Yeah, well, absolutely, Ukraine and this as well. But yeah.
Does it perpetuate the idea, though, that the Prime Minister is financially incontinent? I mean, this is a man that can't even run his own household budget. This guy can't afford wallpaper, and he wants to splash the cash on nuclear.
Yeah, I mean...
Is there a worry? Are there parallels?
He's not... he's a bit of a spendthrift isn't he? But but on the other hand, I think this could be a wise investment. Environmentalists appear to be disagreeing over the benefits of nuclear. More and more people are coming around to the idea of nuclear energy now, I think, and so I think it could be the way to go.
A fascinating story. We'll get more on that, of course, as we get it. The Prime Minister put his foot in it by comparing Brexit to the war in Ukraine. Andrew, tell me more. In The Observer, right?
Yeah, this is in The Observer. So this was a Boris Johnson's speech to the Conservative Spring Conference in Blackpool. And I think he just made this kind of very tone-deaf suggestion. He basically compared the fight in Ukraine, the idea of sort of fighting for your freedom with Brexit. He specifically said here, he was talking about how people naturally choose freedom. And then he said, when the British people voted for Brexit in such large numbers, I don't believe it was because they were remotely hostile to foreigners. It's because they wanted to be free to do things differently and for this country to be able to run itself, which, of course, is a completely different situation to the situation in Ukraine. It is, as I say, a bit tin-eared, a bit tone-deaf. It doesn't really make sense because it is a completely different thing. But, of course, everyone's got... I think he is, moving on to what we were saying earlier about his legacy, I think he is kind of shoehorning in...
Yes.
Because, of course, he is the one who largely, by and large, got Brexit done, according to his manifesto pledge, and he did. And so he's shoehorning that in here. But, yeah, totally...
Yeah, I mean, we weren't being shelled by the European Union, although I'm sure it crossed their minds at certain
They would have liked to. I think Verhofstadt particularly would have liked to do that, but didn't happen.
If you watch the speech, and I've watched it several times trying to understand the point he made.
Can I just say you don't get paid enough to watch that speech several times?
And I watched the Truss and the Patel ones. Just
stop boasting about your research. I do research too.
Yeah, but can I say that you've watched all those speeches several times? There is a haunted look in your eyes.
Yeah, well, especially from the Truss and Patel ones because they were so boring. That's Boris's charm, which we could get onto. But the way he shoehorned is the word, because what he was trying to do clearly was bring in what he sees as his best achievements, which were Brexit and the vaccine. Mm-hmm. And the vaccine thing was even more tenuous. The vaccine was like Ukraine. That one I couldn't even figure out. He said freedom. They want freedom, much like the freedom in Brexit, or the freedom to come forward and get the vaccine. What? So
he's not the only politician that does this.
No.
That always brings it back to their own sort of,
to be honest,
achievements.
When it started to annoy the European Union, it became quite funny to me. I mean, it's wound up Verhofstadt and Tusk, and that's almost worse.
I think that's worth. I mean, Donald Tusk, who was the former president of the European Council, he has actually said that he's very angry about this. He says, Boris, your words offend Ukrainians, the British, and common sense. But don't forget, Donald Tusk, if you recall, was the one who said that Brexit would bring about the destruction of Western political civilization in its entirety. So this man he's like a mothership to Nostradamus kind of thing. He's not averse to a bit of hyperbole himself, let's put it that way. So it's just quite funny to see them all flipping out now,
But the genius of the speech was, even despite this sort of clumsy reference to Ukraine that everyone's talking about, he managed to pull it back with that "I have a bream" thing. Did you see that? It was incredible. He made a reference to a lugworm. He told a strange story about running on the beach in the morning and a man was collecting lugworms. And he said, but you need lugworms. It's all about like the Tory ethos, because you need lugworms to sell, to get breams or not, to whatever you do with them. You somehow use them to entice a bream. And then he said, and I have a bream, ladies and gentlemen. And it was so funny.
It's a great moment. Brought the house down.
Exactly. And he rescued all this ridiculous stuff he'd said at the start. Never mind the fact that our energy policy has been terrible, the Brexit, Ukraine reference. And that's why he's still so good compared to...
He's always done that. He's always done that.
Right.
When in doubt, throw a joke.
Right.
And distract people with a joke. So you think this is a deliberate ploy to distract from the issues?
Oh, not necessarily, but I did think of that he's sort of... You know, his Partygate is quite buried now with the more nonsense he throws out there. Now we're all talking about this link between Brexit and Ukraine. We're talking about breams. We're not thinking about Partygate
anymore.
Well,
you're talking a lot about breams.
Well,
I didn't bring up the breams.
Look, that's the difference between Boris and... If you watch Truss and Patel... See, I think I could give them lessons, Andrew, because I've been doing stand-up 10 years, always been very relaxed on stage. That's what they're missing. Boris's charm and speaking ability is so far above them, and it's enough to be Prime Minister.
Yeah, he's just another headliner. Who knew? Maybe we'll get him on this sofa soon, if he ceases to be Prime Minister. Now, let's go back to this P&O story. It's a real national scandal, Nick. What's the latest, according to the Mail on Sunday?
Yes, it is. So ministers have stepped up attacks on revolting, that's a quote, P&O ferries after a mass sacking of 800 crew to be replaced with £2 an hour agency staff. So, yes, I watched the video on this day. It's very upsetting. Basically, people have been kicked out. They might have been there decades even. Suddenly, they've been kicked out immediately, overnight, and 800 staff sacked. And the legality of it is complicated because the company that owns it is in Dubai, and the contracts were signed in Jersey, so no one knows if it's even legal to do this or not. So that might be how they're getting around the legality. But But it's the moral question, which everyone's focused on, which is it's a terrible thing to do. And Labour have suddenly decided to care about working people again, and they're attacking it. And it's a little, you could argue, a cynic could say it's a bit hypocritical after we've destroyed the travel industry for a couple of years. But yeah, it's a terrible way to behave towards your staff. What were you going to say, Andrew?
Well, I mean, just to say, I think it was particularly shabby because the way they did it was a pre-recorded video over a Zoom meeting, which is very much the equivalent of dumping your partner with a text message, which has definitely not happened to me, by the way.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, but
you have done it to others.
Oh, yeah, all the time. I'm a player. But the thing is,
it was Instagram, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I think we've now got this situation where ministers are obviously stepping in. But of course, it's very important for the Tories to be seen to be protecting workers' rights and workers' interests. But let's face it, workers' rights in this country have been meagre ever since the Thatcher's conflict with the unions back in the day. And then the New Labour was very pro-corporate, pro-managerial class. And then the Tories in the 2010s. We've had a steady, continual decline of support for workers and workers' rights. And it's, it's a bit late, but maybe the Tories will have to do something. But they have to do something because they need to keep them on side. If they're going to maintain that.
But are you really pro-union? Because it's
yes, I am pro-union.
What about when they do the tube strikes and they just bring all of London?
Or school closures during the pandemic.
But your irritation about your travel plans is not the same.
I get taxis, bro. It's not my problem.
You get a chauffeur, right?
But it brings London to a halt. It crashes the whole economy.
I think there is absolutely irresponsible behaviour when it comes to striking, and you mentioned schools as well. And that is absolutely possible, and it is absolutely the case. We've seen it very recently from the National Education Union, the way they're behaving with their strikes at the moment, which are very ideologically driven. But what I would say is when it's done well, you do need to have protections for working people. You absolutely do, because otherwise they will be exploited by rich and powerful people. Too
right, well said. The Read the Room award goes to a United States politician who demonstrated his finger being on the pulse of popular opinion by accusing the Ukrainian president of being a thug and evil. Did he mean to say Putin? This is in Sunday's Independent.
Yes, this is it's a Madison Cawthorn. He's a Republican representative, Republican politician, and he arrived late. So they were playing. So Zelensky was addressing Congress, through the video, and arrived late, so didn't really see it all. Just as the address was about to finish, actually, and this basically tried to draw a moral equivalence between Russia and Ukraine. There has been video footage released of Cawthorn calling Zelensky a thug, saying that he's incredibly corrupt, saying that the regime has been, he actually described it as incredibly evil, and saying that it was pushing woke ideology. So no fan here of Ukraine. It's quite interesting the way that Zelensky has approached addressing the various governments. And, this is very similar to what he did with the UK, of course, because what he does is he invokes elements about the country's particular history. So with us, he invoked Churchill, didn't he? He used phraseology that was very reminiscent of Churchill. He quoted from Hamlet as well. Here, he did the same thing. He invoked Pearl Harbor, September 11 terrorist attacks, very sort of, in order to urge the implementation of a no-fly zone. So he sort of does this very well, and it's very effective. But Cawthorn's having none of it, and subsequently has said, as I've pointed out, honestly, both governments in both Russia and Ukraine are incredibly corrupt and very vile. He's sticking to it.
Well, shall I give the balance then? Because I can see which way you two are going. Well, look, for the sake of balance, because we're broadcast standards, Ukraine was seen as very corrupt until 10 minutes ago when we had this war. There'd be these tables internationally of most corrupt countries. Ukraine and Russia were a few places apart. Yeah. So it was seen like that. Now it's seen as this utopia. I think it is weird, although obviously my heart goes out to Ukrainian people. I find it a bit weird, the thing you said, that Zelensky shows up and he gets to address Parliament or Congress in the US and invoke World War II. And I just find it all a bit odd. And then everyone gets really behind it, which I can't tell. Is that some sort of strange warmongering? Or is it really the politicians saying, we're not actually going to help you in any real term, but we're going to clap? I just find it all very strange.
I think there's two potential things. I mean, one of them is that obviously when a sovereign nation is invaded, that's wrong. And I think most people feel that is wrong. Mm-hmm. And you see the treatment of the people who are dying, and fleeing from their homes. And it's very difficult not to feel empathy for that kind of situation. But at the same token, I do take on board your point, Nick, insofar as any political discussion these days, ever since Brexit really, gets reduced to a binary of good versus evil. Either it's leave or remain, either it's wear a mask or don't wear a mask, either it's put a Ukrainian flag on your Twitter or don't. It's very much binary thinking. And so I do take your point that there is a lack of nuance and sophistication when it comes to this discussion, because inevitably that's the way every major political discussion goes these days.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's my view that the hard left have lost the plot during the pandemic, and also in relation to things like woke culture and trans rights.
Yeah.
But are the right losing the plot over Ukraine? We saw the Conservative commentator Candace Owens pretty much criticising Ukraine and defending Russia. So are the right making a mistake here?
Well, I mean, the idea of losing the plot being a singularly left-wing thing has never been true.
That's right.
You know, and when you have this kind of binary thinking, you will have both sides doing exactly the same thing, just from an opposite approach. And this is why it's really important to have sophisticated, nuanced discussions and not just reduce the...
But I think it's the right who have challenged the COVID consensus, and I think that some of the data suggests their criticisms had merit, particularly if you compare countries that locked down hard, others that didn't. Mask efficacy, all of these things are very much owned by the political left. In many cases, they wanted more, longer, harder, faster. But is this one where the political right, particularly in America, and the antagonists, the contrarians, are actually badly misreading this?
Yeah, well, I think what's happened is they've seen the distrust over COVID, and they've seen the same people that despise them suddenly be all pro-Ukraine and Ukraine flags in their bio. That's part of it. Another part of it is the idea that Russia's sort of Christian nationalist, whereas, you know, Ukraine is in with the wokeness, the WEF, and all that kind of thing. That is a lot of what is driving it. And just like a general mistrust of media, so they say we can't know what's happening. So, but yeah, it can go too far when they come out as being pro-Putin. But that's what I think is driving it.
Yeah, are many now just distrustful of anything that they see on TV or read in a newspaper because of the pandemic?
Oh, not just because of the pandemic. I think we've had this gradual process of mistrust in the media. It's getting worse and worse and worse, and it even predates Trump, really. But just because we have seen so much evidence that so many aspects of the media, on the left and the right, are ideologically driven and would rather present you the world as they would like it to be rather than the world as it is. It's a real problem.
It's time for Andrew and Nick to have their powder, and yes, that is a euphemism. It's the end of part one. Join us after the break when we'll be discussing why you'll want to buy your eggs before Monday, a crazy New York City health official, is there any other kind? And of course, Prince William and Kate, God save the Queen. See you shortly.
GBNews is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, and a warm welcome back to Cal, our producer, who is suitably tanned and full of viruses from Tenerife. Let's take a look at Sunday's papers. with my good self, Mark Dolan, in the company of the most beloved double act since Ant and Dec, Andrew Doyle and Nick Dixon. Let's get ready to rumble. The only reason why Cal wrote that line is so that I would then say, let's get ready to rumble. That's how this show works. Now, this next story is from the Sunday Telegraph. Who wants a crack? Nick?
Is this the eggs?
I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, because it says...
There was a pun in his intro.
Oh, crap, I got it. But then it says The Guardian, so I got confused. Okay.
Nick tunes out whenever I speak. I don't blame you.
No, fair enough.
It's all right. I'm just keeping it raw and authentic, guys. Free-range eggs vanished from supermarket shelves. They've gone. So what's happened is the biggest UK outbreak of bird flu late last year forced farmers to move all their chickens indoors 4 months ago. So there are no more free-range eggs.
Chicken lockdown, cluck down.
Nice.
That would have been the headline in the Star.
This is why you're the presenter, Mark, and I'm the mere guest.
And being the headline writer at the Star is definitely my career plan B. And then 3, I sell my body.
That's my plan A. So, yes, so bird flu is back. It's all quite worrying. Sainsbury's and Morrison's are going to, for the first time in years, have to have barn eggs when they only do free range. So it's another sort of drop in living standard. We've got energy costs, we've got no eggs, the whole world's falling apart. I'm more worried about this thing I heard about in China, where there's a new virus where people are bleeding out of their eyes.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that's not real, and isn't, because it could be another fake story. So I'm hoping.
No, let's hope that's not real.
Bird flu is back on the table, or not on the table. It's a kind of a pun, table-based pun. I should have done it better, like Mark.
It was that was a delivery issue, rather.
Yeah, it's because I only just thought of it, and I realised there was more there.
And you need to rehearse that one. But I think I didn't even spot this. Apparently, the bird flu re-emerged late last year. I completely passed me by. I think we were also focused with other things. Yeah. Partygate and all. Well, no, the pandemic. And I feel for the birds, but apparently it doesn't mean an end of eggs. It just means that the eggs will become barn eggs rather than free-range eggs. Yeah. Which I believe is different to battery eggs. I don't think the chickens. I think they've been put in a barn, so they're still pretty well accommodated. I mean,
it's going to hit North London very hard. The kind of people, the middle-class people who can only eat free-range eggs, they'll disintegrate if they eat a barn.
You only should eat free-range eggs because it's cruel.
Now you
battery farming is cruel.
I know, I agree, but now you can't, Andrew. So are you going to boycott eggs entirely because you're a vegetarian?
I can't give up a morning omelette. I think it's important.
So you're just going to eat caged eggs?
Caged eggs.
Well, caged chickens.
Yeah. They've been in lockdown, but apparently they've got Netflix, which is fine.
Yeah, good for them.
They've been baking banana bread.
Netflix.
There you go.
Very good.
That's what you pay top dollar for here on Headliners. Let's get to our next story. The draconian abortion laws brought in by certain states in the USA has led certain companies to take drastic action. In the Sunday Times, Andrew, tell me more.
Well, so the two big firms, Apple and Citigroup, the investment bank, are now saying that they're going to support members of staff who need to cross state lines in order to get an abortion on the basis that we've had Texas, haven't we, say that they've reduced the abortion limit, I think, to 6 weeks. Yeah, 6 weeks. They call it the heartbeat law. Idaho has done the same thing, and so more and more states are sort of banning abortions beyond a certain limit, and that's very early, 6 weeks, I think, because a lot of people won't even know they're pregnant at that point. So these big corporations say, well, we will help, we will support women who need to go elsewhere to get there. It's quite reminiscent of the way it was here when, obviously in Northern Ireland for the longest time, people had to go over to England in order to get abortion. So that's what's happening here. But there's a lot of people who are very concerned because obviously now the weighting of the Supreme Court is very much towards the right, and they fear that Roe versus Wade will be overturned, and that's the obviously the legislation that prevents states from banning abortions for pregnancies under 23 weeks. So I think that could happen. That could be the case here. But it looks like the corporations are sort of wading in with their view. What do you think?
Well, you've been quite neutral. But it's the ultimate logic of the liberal orthodoxy that they'll pay you to sort of kill your baby and imagine they're good people. I mean, you can now have an abortion as part of your corporate benefits package. I think this is a very disturbing trend, if you ask me. What are you looking? You're looking at me like that?
No, it says you've been very, very clear about where you stand on the abortion debate.
Oh yeah, well, I side with the late Christopher Hitchens on this topic. I'm a pro-lifer, as he was, a big lefty. So it's very interesting. A friend of mine pointed out today that feminists thought to be working mums, and actually coercing someone into an abortion was thought to be sexist, and now they're offering it as part of their benefits. That's quite an interesting point.
But they're not coercing women.
I'm against women in the workplace anyway, but
they're not. What? Well, there's that. Saying the quiet part out loud there, but they're not coercing women into doing anything. What they're saying is that if women make the choice to have an abortion, they will help facilitate it if the state has prohibited that from happening.
No, it was a comparison to when that was the case. But look, The question is, if you were very against this, can you even still use Apple? That's what I'm wondering. Like, am I going to burn my phone? Or am I going to say pro-life stuff on the phone in a kind of
But also, these companies, these corporations are undermining the law in that state, so therefore they're entering politics.
I mean, that's another whole other debate, isn't it, about that? You know, if whether that becomes a point that it's actually, are they breaking the law by doing this? I don't know.
Where do you guys stand? Because you're sitting on the fence on abortion, and
Well, I've got to say, I'm vigorously pro-choice.
Are you?
Yeah, but I would follow the rules of the territory in which I trade. So I think what Apple and others are doing is wrong.
Mm-hmm. See, it's not that I just lean towards pro-life. It's not like because I think the conversation's gone too far the other way. It's not like I'm like brutally pro-life. It's gone so far towards abortion is just a casual thing now, and it's just people joke about it. It's just like, yeah, just get an abortion. I think it's gone way too far over to that side.
Well, I think there just hasn't. You know, this debate is so emotive that you rarely really get a debate. You know, you get people talking about how it's women's rights, but then, of course, they're neglecting the fact that the other side don't see it that way. So they see it as the rights of the fetus, so that actually feminism has nothing to do with it in that respect. But then the other side say it's about God, and that's forgetting that the other side generally don't believe in God. So both sides seem to... That's why I never hear really sophisticated arguments.
What was very interesting is Christopher Hitchens years ago said that the idea of the women's rights argument, that it's the mother's right, has been completely debunked, and the left aren't even taking it seriously anymore. He said that many years ago. Then that argument came back with a vengeance. Anyway, I'm just saying it's not necessarily a right and left...
No, it's not. Luckily, it's not a divisive political story in this country to the same extent, is it? But in America, abortion is massive.
But it's also
totemic.
It's also about this Supreme Court issue.
But it's only not as divisive in this country because the pro-choice side has won so comprehensively.
Fair enough. Well, on to the Sunday Times next. It seems some insurance companies have changed their policies to allow people to take in refugees on one condition, Nick.
Yeah. So insurers allow homeowners to take in refugees, but Ukrainians only. So, although it's slightly misleading, because if you actually look at the story, it says AXA, Aviva, Direct Line and Admiral said they would waive the requirement to inform them if refugees were taken into a home from any... So you can take in a refugee and not tell the insurance people where they're from if it's anywhere in the world. However, RSA and LV will waive requirement only for Ukrainian refugees. So you can take in a Ukrainian... Lloyds Bank will waive premium charges if you have a Ukrainian guest, but will also consider it for people from Afghanistan. It's great for me. This is going to help with the 6 refugees I've taken in, although I like to be different, so I've taken in 6 Russians just to be contrarian. But what's your take on it, Andrew? I've said so many terrible things.
I think after a few days of dealing with your sort of rather dreadful eating habits, your snoring and your rather lack of cleanliness, I'm told they want to go back to Moscow.
I'm very, very clean. Even in this fiction, I don't want you to say that. I don't mind the other bits. It's my views that they would leave for, isn't it? Probably.
Well, look, it's important that we do our bit, and some people have donated money, others have taken in or offered to take in refugees. Yeah, and it's important that insurance companies, administer policies accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing. And what I really like about this entire thing that has happened is, so often we get into these debates about virtue signalling and people sort of wanting to be seen on the right side of something. But taking someone in, actually taking a refugee into your house, you're not signalling, you're doing something rather wonderful there. Yeah, and I think this is...
Thank you.
So, you're a giant of a man, Nick. A moral paragon.
You've got 6 or 7 people around yours. I did hear that you asked for photographs first, which I think is inappropriate.
They've got media commitments.
Each to their own. A personal trainer has beaten up a homeless man in Brazil. This is in the Mail on Sunday, Nick.
Yeah, the headline is Moment Personal Trainer Finds Church-Going Wife Cheating on Him with a Homeless Man in Car Before Dragging Him Out and Beating Him to a Pulp in Brazil. And that's quite a strange phrase. They were already in Brazil. They didn't go to Brazil just to do that.
It's not an elegantly written
No.
headline,
They all it sounds like he took him to Brazil to beat him up. But this is a shock. The video is bizarre. I mean, this personal trainer goes to the car. He finds his wife in there. You're going to say something?
No.
Oh, it looked like you were desperate to talk about the personal trainer. He finds the wife in the car, and he drags him out. He beats up the homeless guy. What's incredible is his wife, a churchgoer, told a friend she'd received a message from God to help the homeless person, which she interprets as mean sleeping with him.
I mean, that's a great excuse. That's up there with Shaggy. Just saying it wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
God told me
to
do this.
And I'd like to say it wasn't God that told it. More likely it was Satan posing as God, because
that
God wouldn't say break up your marriage with a homeless guy in a car.
What I'd say about this, though, it doesn't seem very fair to the homeless guy. He's already homeless. He's been invited in for a tryst with this presumably beautiful woman, and then he's the one who gets beaten up. He hasn't broken any marital vows. Why is he the one getting beaten up?
His big mistake, his misjudgment was sleeping with someone that dates a personal trainer.
Well, because they're going to be quite handy, aren't they? They're going to be quite handy.
He's got guns, he's got abs.
But why is he beat? And I'm not suggesting he.
And he's probably recently eaten protein, which makes people aggressive.
You know, I just think I think all violence is wrong at all times. But don't beat up someone who's done. It's not. It really isn't his fault.
No, but I sympathise with the personal trainer guy, because here's a guy. What do you have to do, guys? He's married. He's in great shape. There's a picture of him, great shape, good-looking guy, and yet still his wife cheats on him with a homeless guy. I mean,
I think that's a good thing. That's a positive message to send. Like, it's not all about how you look. So, you know, there's more to people than your superficial judgments of them.
I just think men are trying so hard, and he's doing the right thing. He's kept a stable relationship. He's working out. He's looking after his health, and then his wife just cheats him and blames it on God.
Well, you know, the heart wants what it wants.
I think you're so right. It's very progressive. And after this show, I shall hit central London and seek out some fallen women and see how I can help. Good luck with that. The story in the Mail on Sunday now. The New York City Health Commissioner has said children should wear masks indefinitely. Is this a joke, or is he suffering from long COVID, Nick?
Yes, this is I don't know why they're all coming to me, but it's great. NYC's new health commissioner, Dr. Ashwin Vasan, says mask mandates for kids under 5 should remain in effect indefinitely, and it's absolutely insane. It's totally disproportionate given the stats about children affected by COVID. It says here 19% of all cases of children, 0.26% resulted in death. We know cloth masks don't really do much. And this guy talks about mental health everywhere. So he says that critical race theory he somehow ties to mental health. He says that climate change, the mental health impacts of climate change...
This is woke bingo, isn't it?
...cannot be understated. Yeah.
Where are the trans rights bits?
He says defund the police. He's pro-vaccine for fetuses. He's pro-BLM. All of it. He's got the whole bingo. And bizarrely, even though he's so into mental health, he wants to mask kids forever. We don't know what that does to a kid's self-esteem or like his anxiety.
I think we do. I think,
yeah, it's terrible for
them. It's really bad for them.
Right, and they can't recognise faces as much. There's communication issues.
I mean, the issue, exactly as we were talking about earlier, about this idea that, you know, this binary thinking, this ideological thinking, and this is an absolute perfect example, you know. He's got the whole thing, like you say, he's got the BLM thing, he's got critical race theory, he's almost certainly got the trans rights issue, etc. And vaccinations is now in there as well, and masks and all the rest of it. It's so predictable when you meet an ideologue. You will know their opinions on absolutely everything. I could have told you his opinion on critical race theory and BLM just from hearing what he said about
because these are the 10 commandments of the tribe.
But the other thing about this, which I think is really serious, is that, you know, we know that masking 5-year-olds serves no purpose. These are not people who are at risk of the virus. As you say, there are serious doubts about the efficacy of masks anyway. But I think there's a worry that there are people... I mean, he's talking about indefinitely. So irrespective of a virus. And this, you know, remember when The Economist did that survey and they found out that 19% of the UK wanted, even in the event that the virus was over, even in the event that the pandemic's finished, to have a curfew, a 10 p.m. curfew, 19%, permanently, to close casinos and nightclubs permanently, to have travel quarantines permanently. You know, all of this stuff. I mean, it's really, to have masks on public transport. 40% of people said they wanted masks on public transport permanently, irrespective of whether or not there was a pandemic. Bonkers. There is something about people that they crave this kind of lockdown element. I don't understand it. I don't get it at all.
Well, they can give up responsibility, and it's the comfort of the state. Presumably, I don't know, because I don't get it either. But what really annoyed me as well was he said here, I would love nothing more than to send my son to daycare without a mask. They always pretend they would love I'd love to get rid of masks, but sadly we have to keep them indefinitely. It's like, you wouldn't love anything more than that. You desperately want to keep
really
masks.
Bad for kids. And you know there was that viral video of when the young children in America were told they could take their masks off.
They were so happy.
They were so delighted. They were so...
Or the toddler in tears having the mask put back on his face every 3 seconds in a nursery. Yeah. It's clearly a pretty unedifying stuff. Well, that's it for part 2. We'll be back in just one moment with some more top Sunday stories. In fact, we have saved our best till last. We've got a gun-toting Gallagher brother, one of Britain's most dangerous prisoners, and badgers. What's not to like? See you in 2.
GBNews is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the final part of Headliners with me, Mark Donan. Looking at tomorrow's papers are the brilliant comedians Andrew Doyle and Nick Dixon. Hell hath no fury, like a woman scorned. This from the Sunday Times, Andrew.
Oh, so this is a female soldier who attacked another female soldier, another private, because she was taking a selfie with a male soldier, a private Lemon, and the jealousy, the rage. She saw red. Her name was Private Amy Waters. She punched Charlotte Milner, who was the other lady, but grabbed her head and shoved it into a wall. I mean, it was proper kind of repeatedly punched her in the face. Just terrible, inexcusable violence. But it does go to show. I mean, obviously my background is in English literature. I know the sexual jealousy is possibly the most potent of human emotions, and this is why you get these crimes of passion, because it is a moment of in control. You cannot control yourself. I don't experience this because I'm dead inside, but I think people who are capable of love do get these sort of and they end up sort of very much hurting people they care about.
Yeah, that's right, and it's the ultimate cat fight, isn't it?
You've hit on the problem, and I hate to say it, but this is why the armies shouldn't really be mixed, because I've watched a lot of SAS Who Dares Wins, and they say, if you put women into a situation with a lot of men, jealousy is going to occur.
Well, you say that, but do you remember?
I phrased it quite tactfully there.
You remember the ancient Greek army of gay lovers, and it was just made up exclusively of gay lovers, and the theory was that if one of the soldiers died, the other one would fight twice as hard to avenge him, and they were known as being the toughest, most meanest, most aggressive.
That proves my... Yeah, but they're... Okay,
so I don't think you're right.
There's no women in there still, is there?
No, but there's... But you see, your initial premise negated the possibility for homosexual attraction.
Well, do you know what it was? I didn't want to say you shouldn't put women in the army, so I went with mixed, and then I opened myself up to your gay
accusations of
army
homophobia.
defence.
What I'm telling you is a gay army would actually be a better army. An exclusively gay army.
They're still men, so they're,
So they're, what you're saying, more reasonable? I think this is where you're driving.
A gay army, that's a thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's been done before. It'll probably be done again. But I think in this case, look, it's not about mixed sex in the army or whether people... Obviously, people are going to mix in their own recreational time.
That's what they said on SAS Who Dares Wins. That's not me saying that. That's Ant Middleton.
No, but this is the issue of just people in their free time getting drunk, overreacting and doing something that she is doubtless going to regret, because there's no way you can continue an army career once you've done something like that. But I think it's more about human nature, which you cannot eradicate, however much you would like to.
Would the tailoring in a gay army be better?
They would look better and they would fight better. I think it's just
the officers' mess would be more fun, wouldn't it? Better tunes.
It's hard to top those Nazi Hugo Boss uniforms, isn't it?
That's true. That's true.
In one way, it's hard to top them. Yes,
exactly.
On a sartorial level, that might be the length and breadth of it. But on that controversial note, let's move on. It's what this show's all about. It's all about opinions. Apparently, Russian hackers have been calling Nadine Dorries. I wonder if they regret making that call, Nick.
Yes. imposters target 3 ministers with prank calls. So this is quite a shocking story from the Times. So it happened to Nadine Dorries, it happened to Priti Patel, and it happened to Ben Wallace. And what happened was someone pretending to be Zelensky called them up. He had the flag, he sounded and looked like him. Ben Wallace spoke to him for 10 minutes before realising it wasn't. And then when he realised the questions got increasingly wild, he hung up. Now, well, of course, what he should have done is, as soon as he twigged that it was a fake call, is start giving out fake information, right?
Yeah.
You say things like, we're preparing to send in the bears. And, you say, like, we're sending in 500 bears strapped with weapons to Ukraine. Say things like that. Whatever. That's just one example. But what he did was just hang up, which is the second best option.
That's actually not a bad strategy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And but I mean, you can tell if it's Zelensky because immediately he starts talking about World War II and asking for weapons. But this is going to be a problem. There's all these deep fakes. And somehow this call got through, which we should be concerned about. And Ben Wallace tweeted about it, which is how I found about it, which I thought was weird, but perhaps he had to get ahead of the story. But yes, basically it's very easy to get through as a fake to our Ministry of Defence.
What's going on? I mean, this is insane. Like, why isn't that? Surely it's got to go through the Foreign Office or something. Like, you can't just phone up, put on a voice, put on a wig and phone up and speak to the Culture Secretary. How does this work?
That's right. A couple of years ago, Elton John was tricked into a prank call with Vladimir Putin. So if it can happen to Elton, it can happen to anyone.
I mean, I think it does suggest that there is a hole in the security somewhere. So maybe address that, guys. Maybe deal with that.
Yeah.
I think it's worrying.
Memo to the Foreign Office. Now, let's crack on because this one's another corker. According to the Mail on Sunday, Disney have reinstated a gay kissing scene in the upcoming Buzz Lightyear film. Speaking on behalf of all gay people everywhere, what are your thoughts, Andrew?
Yes, I'm going to make this statement on behalf of all of my kind. I mean, the thing is, so they'd taken the gay scene out of this Disney film, this Pixar scene. They've now reinstated it. This is all relating to, it carries on from Disney sort of getting in a lot of trouble for not condemning the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, which is, well, that's what they're calling it. That's not what the bill's actually called, of course. And it's a very weird one because that bill, it doesn't say you can't use the word gay at all. It doesn't say you can't discuss homosexuality or gender identity at all. What it says, it's actually mostly a bill about parental access to school records and the extent to which parents need to be consulted about what their kids are being taught, that kind of thing. There's one paragraph which talks about how basically gender identity, ideology and sexuality can't be taught to kids who are under the age of 8. And that strikes me as perfectly reasonable. It doesn't strike me as homophobic. Yeah. After that point, you can talk about these very important issues. I mean, it's a weird one. It's a weird example of how...
Underage don't generally get taught the facts of life in this country.
They don't know or care about that sort of stuff, and they wouldn't understand it even if you did. I mean, it's just interesting to me the way this has been represented by the mainstream media as this sort of majorly the equivalent to Section 28 in this country, which was an authentically anti-gay piece of legislation, and it's deliberate manipulation and lies. And the thing is, you can read the legislation and check for yourself. That's what I find so bizarre. But I do think when it comes to Disney and this reinstated kiss, it isn't really about this, why you would take that out or put it back in or whatever. And there's a moment in this article where it talks about the film that had a gay character. It was a film called Onward, a Disney film called Onward. And that was therefore banned because it had one gay character saying one reference to her partner. And it was banned in Kuwait, Oman, Qatar and Saudi Arabia because of the scene. This affects them financially because there are countries in this world where to be gay is dangerous, right? And it's quite astonishing that that's why they cut these things. They're worried about their finances, aren't they? I think that's what it is. Yeah, you know what? If they'd have made, all these sort of gay characters they're inserting into these Disney films, if they'd have done that 20 years ago, when it could have made a difference, I would be slapping them on the back and saying that's great. When there was a risk to doing it, but now, it's nothing. You know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the reason they cut them is usually because, like you say, other countries, usually China or one of the other countries you mentioned. Yeah. It didn't say why here. And should kids' films really be the battleground for sexual politics is my question. I mean, we don't really have just art or storytelling for its own sake. It feels like anymore. We just have varying degrees of propaganda. Am I right?
Yeah, you're being preached at, basically, by Disney of all people.
Could we go the other way and just have no kissing in films? Because even I'm 47 years of age, but even now when there's a snogging scene in a film, my mum still comes in.
Yeah,
she doesn't live with us.
And you don't like affection, human affection generally. It's not your thing.
I don't enjoy it.
No.
I'm thinking of the sort of those Bond movies with Roger Moore when he was about 107, kissing these young Bond girls. It was too much.
I think it should just be people sitting around in fully dressed, not touching each other, socially distanced.
Like Victorian England. That's how
exactly like Victorian England. Very austere, sexless, like you.
Now you're turning me on. On to the Mail on Sunday now. The badger cull, an appropriate response to TB outbreaks in cattle, or a cruel and needless slaughter? What do the experts say, Andrew?
Well, the experts say that the controversial badger cull, which has been slaughtering all sorts and a lot of badgers, and 140,000 badgers have been murdered. I'm going to use the word murdered in this cull since 2007. Cost many millions of pounds to the taxpayer. It has no scientific basis. The idea of killing all these badgers was that it would prevent the spread of tuberculosis amongst bovine animals, amongst cattle. It doesn't. So the report is absolutely clear about this. And now the government is criticising this report. The farmers' groups are criticising this report. What are they not doing? They're not following the science here because it's not convenient. The truth is that these the cull has done absolutely nothing. And all you've got is a big pile of badger corpses.
Absolutely grotesque image. I mean, it's poor badgers, firstly. Secondly, it reminds me, being from the lakes, of the horrible foot and mouth situation where they were slaughtering cows for questionable reasons. They were destroying businesses. There was weird disinfectant foot baths all around the country.
Remember those, yeah.
So it was a horrible time. It's much like that. And it's also much like, as you maybe implied there, this whole COVID thing, because it's thinking we can control things that we actually can't. And we misjudged it again.
Leave the badgers alone.
Leave the badgers alone.
My concern is the
Hands off
badgers.
our badgers.
That's exactly what it sounds dirty when you say it.
Talking of furry creatures, Noel Gallagher is in the news. And he's going to mess Putin up. This in the Express, Andrew.
OK, so Noel Gallagher is saying that he would be happy to shoot if World War III broke out from his mansion in wherever it is. He says that he's... it was just... I mean, I think it was just a podcast that he was involved in, and he says that, and I can't use the language that he used, obviously, but you can see the asterisks is strategically placed there. Shoot anything that effing moved. He said he would get involved. He wants to get involved. I mean, this is just what he does, isn't it? This is just the kind of alpha male grandstanding which we've had since the heady days of Oasis. Do you remember they even released a single of him and Liam just shouting at each other for half an hour? That was a single. Amazing. It was called Sibling Rivalry or something, something like that.
Can I say my favourite bit? He says, I'd get out to Hampshire, and I know a few people out there with shotguns and submachine guns. Who are these people with submachine guns? That's the real story.
He says he could get a gun and he could, can you? Why?
Yeah,
he knows a copper with access to firearms.
Yes.
And when you're a rock star, that works.
And he says he'd sit on his roof, he'd get a load of telescopic stuff from Amazon, and he can just see for miles and miles on his roof.
He thinks he's in an episode of The Walking Dead, doesn't he?
It sounds ridiculous, Andrew, but then Zelensky used to be a comedian. Now he's a sort of warlord, or whatever you call him, a leader, a sort of warrior figure, leader of a country. That's it. But he always
warlord.
Well, warlord.
Overlord.
That's my right wing.
But I mean,
if Zelensky can do it, why not Noel?
It seems like a strange story. I don't know why this really made the... I mean, it's just Noel Gallagher being funny, isn't he?
Well, it is really.
Isn't he just joking?
Yes, and isn't he refreshingly un-PC, refreshingly
absolutely.
unwoke?
Oh, no, I like him going on his rants. I wasn't being critical. I think, I think the way the media sort of build it up a little bit as though this is a serious thing he's saying that he's going to say.
He also complained in that podcast about lefties, didn't he?
Did he?
You saw that, yeah. And I wonder whether he's one of this sort of new breed of people. Many people call themselves politically homeless, where they're a bit populist, a bit feisty and anti-woke, but they're not right-wing, they don't like lefties. Is that possible?
Well, it's because the sort of woke left, not the authentic left, but the woke left has become the establishment now. So if you want to be rock and roll, if you want to be the equivalent of punk, whatever it is today, then you rail against them, because that's like railing against
the minute you do, you fall into the trap of being called right-wing, but I don't think you're actually right-wing. I'm sure back in the day, Liam Gallagher, Noel Gallagher were both lefties. Yeah, Noel went to meet Tony Blair, didn't he?
It's a bit like John Lydon, the ultimate punk, right? Johnny Rotten. He was obviously punk, but then he came out pro-Trump because he recognised that was the more punk position, and he was pro-Brexit, whereas everyone else just holds on to their old beliefs, no matter how obsolete.
Well, that's why the rock and roll stars these days are just very, very boring generally, because they are pro-establishment. I mean, it's really, really boring. And the thing about the woke left is they will call everyone right-wing, irrespective of their views anyway. It's just a catch-all slur to them. They don't know what it means, and the reason they don't understand it is because the woke left are pretty right-wing, because they're obsessed with upper-middle-class causes
I love
on the
that
whole.
you've attacked them back by calling them right-wing.
But they are authentically right-wing because they care more about, as I say, the middle class. When have they ever said anything about the working classes or social mobility or redistribution of wealth?
They've said a lot. They're against it.
Yeah, exactly. They don't like working-class people because they think they all voted for Brexit and drive around in white vans.
Right, and just because
they're
that's
snobs.
true doesn't mean they shouldn't like them.
You with your controversial statements.
No, they're my people.
You're on a roll, Nick.
More controversial statements from the Sunday Star, Nick, and this is about a homeowner not happy.
Oh, yes. This was actually Andrew's story, so I didn't bother learning that much about it, but I'll do my best. Residents fury after being asked to pay $82,000 a year for wooden frame by the river. So it's essentially a rubbish park they have to maintain, and they didn't ask to maintain it, they didn't want to maintain it, but they're being asked to. It's kind of like in my building that they keep putting up the service charge, and we're like, but the lift's always broken, so what's all about? Andrew, what do you think? Because you probably...
I think you should... well, I mean, it's not really, it's £108 each resident has to pay as this annual service fee, and it doesn't sound great. Like, it's a wooden climbing frame, which is fairly... You might get splinters, though. I'm a bit concerned about that. Picnic table, a bench and 2 bins. You know, but the thing about that is that sounds like it could be quite useful, but I think you'd have to be consulted first, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Because if you're going to have to pay £102 a year, which people can ill afford in these current climate, I think they should have asked them about it before.
Also, doesn't it show what a racket these local authority services are, that it costs that much just to give some wood a lick of paint once a year?
I mean, honestly, I know someone who could have knocked that up for like a £5, you know?
Easy.
And you wouldn't have... Easy, you know, they're just not going to the right sources. Bureaucracy, you see.
Well, there you go. Look, let's finish with this one, and this is bureaucracy in the extreme. Charles Bronson, dubbed Britain's most notorious prisoner, says he'll be set free ahead of his parole, according to Sunday's Star. Nick, could he seriously get out?
It sounds like it, and as such, I'm going to be very careful what I say about him, because...
He'll come after you.
Yes, indeed. There's a headline. Charles Bronson insists he'll be set free ahead of notorious Lag's parole hearing. So... he might actually get out, he's claiming, and I'm a little bit worried because my favourite's a strange word to use about a brutal attack, but in 2014, because he's a Spurs fan, he covered himself in Lurpak, not because he's a Spurs fan, to attack 12 prison officers because Arsenal had just won the FA Cup.
Why do you cover yourself in Lurpak?
You're too slippery for them to do
I thought it was like a
anything to
fetish
you.
thing.
No, they slip around and you're punching them and they're all sliding around.
It's a good tip, I'll take that on board.
Well, he did the exact same thing in 2010, so it worked.
Because the thing about him is, so he had his sentence, he was a very, very violent man, but it keeps getting extended because of the violence he commits in prisons, and he's known as... But I used to, when I lived in Aberystwyth and when I was a teenager, we used to walk past the house he grew up in every day. People used to point over and say, that's Charles Bronson's house, that's the most evil man in Britain's house. It was quite chilling, had a chilling effect on me.
But Andrew, on the flip side, he can still do 95 press-ups in 30 seconds.
Well, look, which is impressive. I can do a bit more, but, you know, he's 70. He's 70 years old now, and I think, you know, it's this question of, do we believe in rehabilitation? I mean, I like to think that anyone can reform. I don't think anyone...
But is it rehabilitation if, as recently as 2014, you were covering yourself in Lurpak and beating up police?
I mean, I don't think covering yourself in Lurpak is a very good look anyway. I think I judge that just aesthetically.
Well, I quite like butter, so...
I hate it.
Really?
It makes me feel ill.
I would find him quite lickable.
I think if he'd used any other condiment, maybe a nice marmalade or something, I would have gone with
Really?
that.
If I was hungry, look, you're a monster, but go on then, let's have a go.
I mean, it's an interesting strategy when it comes to the fight. Maybe he probably learned that from those 200 gay... the gay army.
Yeah.
In
if he did
Greece.
get out, I mean, there'd be a book deal. Serialisation in the Mail on Sunday. They've had worse, haven't they, on their books?
Are they allowed to? Are ex-criminals allowed to write about their crimes for money?
See why not?
Oh, mate.
Jeffrey Archer.
I mean, you're talking about the proceeds of crime. I
mean, he didn't cover himself.
But that would have been money that they made from breaking the law previously.
I see. OK, no, I'm getting confused.
I can't imagine that there's any reason why they couldn't profit from their previous crimes.
No, and there's going to be a film about it.
The Jungle, I'm a Celebrity.
Ah, yes, that's true.
I think so.
Yes.
Matter of time.
Michael Bay profits from Transformers. That was a terrible crime, that film.
Gosh.
Horrendous.
Against the whole of humanity. That's a few hours I won't get back. My thanks to the amazing Nick Dixon and Andrew Doyle. Of course, we're back tomorrow with more front pages. That'll be Monday's papers in Headliners at 11. And I'm in the hot seat from 9. See you then.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6